If you ever have to choose between staying silent and saving a life, you won't have time to think. You'll just act. The first thing I remember is the sound of crystal glasses clinking, soft and elegant, like nothing bad had ever happened in a room like this, like nothing bad ever could. And yet my hands were already shaking before I even understood why. Fingers tightening around the silver tray as I moved between guests who didn't see me, didn't need to see me, because I was just part of the background. Another waitress in a black dress, trying not to spill anything on people who wore watches worth more than my yearly rent. And I told myself to keep my head down, finish my shift, go home, forget this night ever existed. But then I heard it, just a sentence, quiet, almost swallowed by the music. It works faster in champagne. And something in my chest dropped so hard it felt physical, like missing a step in the dark, like my body knew before my mind could catch up. And I slowed without meaning to, just enough to hear the next words. He won't make it past the toast. And I didn't need them to say a name because everyone in this room already knew who tonight belonged to, Alexander Vance. The man people didn't look at directly. The man whose presence bent the air around him. The man whose engagement party had turned this entire ballroom into something too polished, too controlled, like perfection hiding something sharp underneath. And I told myself it wasn't my business, that people like me didn't get involved in things like this. That walking away was the smart choice, the safe choice. But then I saw him, standing near the center of the room under the golden chandelier, tall, still, composed in a way that didn't feel human, like nothing could touch him, like nothing ever had. And beside him stood his fiancée, Victoria Hale, beautiful in the kind of way that looked flawless from a distance but wrong up close. Her smile, just a second too slow. Her fingers tightening around the stem of her glass like she was holding on to something heavier than it looked. And that's when it hit me. Not a thought, not logic, just instinct, the kind that doesn't ask permission. If I did nothing, he was going to drink that glass. And if he drank it, something irreversible would happen, something I would carry with me long after tonight ended. And suddenly breathing felt harder, the room too tight, the music too loud, my pulse beating so fast I could hear it in my ears. And I tried to tell myself again to walk away, that I didn't know enough, that I could be wrong, that this wasn't my place, but my feet didn't move, not away, not towards safety, just frozen there while the master of ceremonies lifted his voice, announcing the toast, the moment everyone had been waiting for, glasses rising one by one, a ripple of gold and glass under the lights, and I saw Victoria's hand extend toward him, offering the champagne, her smile perfect, her eyes not, and something inside me snapped so quietly no one else could hear it. No warning, no plan, just motion. I set the tray down without remembering how, my body already moving through the crowd, past shoulders and silk dresses and quiet conversations. That didn't matter anymore. Each step louder in my head than it could possibly be in reality, and all I could think was that I had seconds, maybe less, that once he lifted that glass, there would be no undoing it. No second chance, and when I reached him, I didn't stop, didn't hesitate, didn't think about consequences or who he was or what he could do to someone like me. I just reached up, grabbed the front of his jacket, and kissed him, right there in front of everyone, the entire room, collapsing into silence around us. And for a fraction of a second that felt like forever, I forgot how to breathe, forgot where I was, forgot everything except the fact that I had just crossed a line I could never step back from. And then I whispered against him, barely a breath, don't drink it, expecting him to push me away, to react, to do something, anything. But he didn't. He stayed completely still, his hand coming up to steady me instead, firm, controlled, like this moment belonged to him now, like I had just stepped into something far bigger than I understood. And when he finally looked at me, really looked, his eyes sharp, unreadable, I realized with a cold clarity that made my stomach drop. I hadn't just saved him. I had just made myself impossible to ignore. His hand does not leave my waist, not even after I pull back, not even after the silence stretches so thin it feels like it might snap. And for a moment I think I made a mistake, that I misread everything, that I just destroyed my life for nothing. But then Alexander Vance lifts the champagne glass anyway, slow, deliberate, his eyes never leaving mine, and my heart stops, actually stops. Because I just told him not to drink it, and he is still going through with it. and I realize this is not panic. This is something else, something controlled, something planned. Like he is testing the truth of what I said without saying a word, and I want to grab his wrist, to stop him, to shout. But I cannot move. I cannot breathe. The entire room watching us like they are waiting for a performance they do not understand. And then, just before the glass touches his lips, he pauses, barely noticeable unless you are looking directly at him. And I am the only one close enough to see it, that fraction of hesitation, that shift in his gaze. And then he lowers the glass with a calm smile, turning slightly toward the crowd as if nothing happened, as if everything is still perfectly on script. To new beginnings, he says, his voice smooth, steady, carrying across the room like nothing is wrong, and the guests echo him, glasses raised, laughter returning in soft waves, the tension dissolving for everyone except me, because I can still feel his hand on me, still feel the weight of his attention like a spotlight no one else can see. And then it happens, so subtle it could be missed. A man in a dark suit steps forward from the edge of the room, takes the glass from Alexander's hand with quiet efficiency, replaces it with another, identical in every way except I know it is not the same. I know it, and Alexander does not question it, does not look surprised, just continues the toast as if this was always part of the evening. And that is when the fear shifts, not away, but deeper, sharper, because I understand now that I did not interrupt chaos. I stepped into a world where chaos is managed, controlled, turned into something invisible, and I do not belong here. I never did, and yet I cannot leave. Not with the way he is still looking at me, like I am no longer background, no longer invisible, but something he is trying to figure out, something unexpected. And when the toast ends and the room erupts into polite applause, he finally moves, just enough to lean closer, his voice low, meant only for me. If you are wrong, he says, calm, almost conversational, this will be the worst decision you have ever made. And my throat tightens because I already know that. I knew it the second I stepped toward him, but I do not look away. I cannot. I am not wrong. I whisper, my voice steadier than I feel. And something flickers in his expression, not doubt, not anger, something closer to interest. And then his hand drops from my waist, the absence of it sudden, disorienting, like losing balance. And for a second I think it is over, that he is going to dismiss me. Let security handle whatever comes next. But instead he turns slightly, a small gesture that sends the men around him into motion without a word. The energy of the room shifting again, quieter this time, more controlled, conversations continuing, but voices lower, movements sharper, like everyone important just received a message no one else heard. And I feel it then, the invisible line I crossed, the way the space around me changes, how people start noticing me without looking directly, how I am no longer just a waitress passing through. I am part of something now, something I do not understand, and before I can decide if I should run or stay or apologize or explain, one of the men in suits steps to my side, not touching me, not forcing anything, but close enough that I know I am not free to move. This way, he says quietly, polite but not optional, and I glance at Alexander one last time, expecting him to look away, to already be focused on something else, something more important. But he is still watching me, his expression unreadable, calculating, like he is already deciding what I am worth, what I mean, what to do with me. And that realization sends a cold wave through my chest, because I did not just save him, I just made myself a question he is not going to ignore. And as I am guided away from the center of the room, away from the lights and the music and the illusion of safety, I understand something with terrifying clarity. Whatever happens next, I am not going back to the life I had before I kissed him. The hallway is quieter than the ballroom, but it is not safer, and I feel it immediately. The way the air changes, the way every step echoes just a little too clearly against polished marble floors, like this place was designed to make sure nothing goes unnoticed. And I walk because I have no choice, because the man beside me does not touch me, but somehow controls the space around me anyway, guiding without force. And I keep my hands still at my sides so he cannot see them tremble, because I need to look like I belong here, even though I do not. Even though every instinct is telling me I made a mistake stepping into something this far above me, and my mind keeps replaying the moment in the ballroom, the glass, the hesitation, The way Alexander did not react like a normal person would. And that thought alone is enough to unsettle me, because it means he is not just powerful, he is prepared, always prepared. And people like that do not forgive unpredictability, they eliminate it. And suddenly I am very aware that I am the unpredictable variable in his night, the one thing he did not plan for. And that realization settles heavy in my chest as we stop outside a closed door at the end of the hallway. The man beside me stepping aside just enough to gesture, not forcing, but making it clear this is as far as I go alone. And for a second I consider refusing, consider running. But I know how that would end. I have seen enough tonight to understand that leaving is not an option anymore. So I reach for the handle, my fingers colder than they should be, and I push the door open, stepping into a room that feels completely different from the chaos outside. Quiet, controlled, almost empty except for him, Alexander Vance, standing near the window with his back to me, the city lights stretching behind him like a second skyline. And he does not turn immediately, does not rush, just stands there like he already knows I am here, like he has all the time in the world, and I am the one on borrowed seconds. And the door clicks shut behind me with a soft final sound that feels louder than anything else tonight. And for a moment neither of us speaks, the silence stretching until it becomes something tangible, something pressing against my lungs. And then he moves, just enough to turn his head slightly, not fully facing me yet, his voice cutting through the quiet, low and precise, start from the beginning. And I swallow because there is no warmth in it, no gratitude, just expectation. And I realize this is not a conversation. This is an evaluation, and I am standing in the center of it with nothing but my own words to keep me from being dismissed as a problem instead of a solution. So I force myself to breathe, to steady, to remember exactly what I heard, not what I felt, not what I assumed, but the facts, because something tells me that is the only thing that matters to him. I was serving near the east side of the room. I say, my voice quieter than I want, but still holding. Two men were talking. They said the champagne would work faster, that you would not make it past the toast. And I watch him carefully, waiting for a reaction, for any sign that I am confirming something he already suspected. But his expression does not change. His posture does not shift. He just listens, completely still, completely focused, and it makes me more aware of every word I choose, every pause, because it feels like he is measuring not just what I say, but how I say it. They did not use your name. I continue. But they did not need to. Everyone here knows who tonight is about. And this time there is a slight movement, almost imperceptible, his fingers tightening just a fraction against the edge of the table beside him. And it is enough to tell me I am not wrong, that I did not imagine this, that what I heard was real, and a small piece of the fear shifts, not gone, but changed, sharper, more focused, because now this is not about guessing. It is about consequences, and finally he turns fully, facing me, those eyes locking onto mine with an intensity that makes it impossible to look away. And for a second I forget everything else, the room, the risk, the fact that I am completely alone with a man who could change the course of my life with a single decision. Because all I can think is that I have never been looked at like this before, like I am not invisible, not background, but something that matters, something that could alter outcomes. And that realization is both terrifying and impossible to ignore. Why? He asks, simple, direct, cutting through everything else. Did you decide it was your problem? And I open my mouth, ready with the obvious answer, the safe one, that anyone would help, that it was the right thing to do. But the truth comes out instead before I can stop it, because no one else was going to. And the silence that follows is different from before, heavier, charged with something I cannot quite name. And for the first time since I walked into that ballroom, I realize this moment is not just about what I did. It is about what happens next, and whether saving him was the beginning of something or the worst mistake I will ever make. For a moment, he does not respond, and that silence feels heavier than anything he could have said, like the entire outcome of my decision is being calculated somewhere behind those eyes. And I realize this is the part no one prepares you for, the part after you act, when you have to stand still and wait for someone far more powerful to decide if you were right or if you just made yourself a liability. And I hold his gaze even though every instinct tells me to look down, to make myself smaller, safer. But something inside me refuses to shrink now. not after everything that already happened. And finally he moves, just a single step closer, enough to close the distance between us, enough that I can feel the shift in the air again, that controlled pressure that seems to follow him everywhere. No one else, he repeats quietly, as if testing the weight of my words, and there is something in his tone that I cannot place. Not disbelief, not approval, something sharper, like interest mixed with caution, and his eyes flicker over my face like he is searching for something I cannot see, something that will tell him if I am a risk or an asset. And I realize in that moment that this is not about gratitude. This is about control, about understanding the variable I introduced into his night, and whether it can be managed. And I feel my pulse pick up again because I do not know which answer is worse, being dismissed or being kept. And then he turns slightly, reaching for the glass that had been replaced earlier, the one that is safe, the one I know will not hurt him. And he lifts it without hesitation this time, taking a slow sip while still watching me, like he is proving a point I am just beginning to understand, that nothing in his world happens without being observed, verified, controlled. And when he sets the glass down, the faintest trace of something like acknowledgement passes through his expression, so brief I almost miss it, but it is there, enough to shift something inside my chest. Not relief, not yet, but something close to it. You were right, he says, and the words land differently than I expected, not dramatic, not emotional, just factual, like confirming a detail in a report. But even that is enough to change everything, because it means I did not imagine it. I did not overstep for nothing. I did not risk everything on a mistake, and yet the tension does not leave the room. If anything, it sharpens, because now that I am right, I matter more, and that is far more dangerous than being wrong. And he studies me for another second before continuing. That makes you useful. And there it is, the line that settles everything into place, the truth beneath the calm exterior. This is not about saving him, not anymore. This is about what happens to me now that I have proven I can see things others miss, that I can act when others hesitate. And a part of me wants to step back, to create distance, but I do not. I stand my ground even as the weight of his words sinks in. I did not do it to be useful, I say, and I am not sure if I should have said it. Not sure if pushing back is a mistake, but it is too late to take it back now. And something shifts again, subtle but real, his head tilting just slightly as if I just gave him a different answer than he expected. And for a moment neither of us speaks, the silence stretching again. But this time it feels different, less like judgment and more like something building, something changing direction. And then there is a knock at the door, soft, controlled, and he does not look away from me when he responds, "Come in." And the door opens just enough for one of the men from earlier to step inside, his posture precise, his voice low. The situation has been contained, he says, choosing his words carefully, and I do not need more details than that. The tone alone tells me everything I need to know, that whatever threat existed is no longer immediate, that the illusion in the ballroom will continue as if nothing happened. And Alexander nods once, dismissing him without another question, without any visible reaction, like this is routine, like moments like this happen more often than they should. And when the door closes again, the quiet returns, heavier than before, and he finally looks away, just for a second, glancing toward the window as if considering something beyond this room, beyond me. And when he speaks again, his voice is lower, more deliberate. You inserted yourself into something that does not forgive mistakes, he says, and I feel the truth of that settle into my bones, because I already know it. I felt it the second I stepped forward, the second I kissed him, the second I chose not to stay silent. And now you are part of it, he adds, turning back to me, his gaze steady, final, like there is no version of tonight where I walk away untouched, and my breath catches slightly, because that is the part one have been avoiding. The part one did not want to say out loud, that saving him did not end anything. It started something I do not understand yet, but cannot escape. And he takes one final step closer, close. Enough that I can see every detail in his expression, every controlled movement, every decision behind his eyes. And when he speaks again, it is quieter, but somehow more certain. The question now, he says, is whether you survive it. And I feel that sentence settle somewhere deep. Not as a threat, not exactly, but as a truth I cannot ignore, because for the first time tonight, I understand that this is no longer about what I did. It is about what I have become the moment I chose not to look away. The words stay in the air long after he says them, not loud, not threatening, but final in a way that settles deep in my chest, and I realize he is not asking for an answer. He is stating a reality I have already stepped into, and for the first time since this night began, I feel something shift inside me. Not fear, not panic, something steadier, something that refuses to break under the weight of his presence. Because if I was going to fall apart, I would have done it back in that ballroom. Not here, not now, and I lift my chin just slightly, enough to meet his gaze without hesitation. Then I guess I will have to learn fast, I say, and the words come out quieter than I expect but stronger than I feel. And for a split second something changes in his expression, not surprise exactly, but a recognition, like I just confirmed something he was already considering. And that thought alone sends a strange warmth through the tension. Not comfort, never comfort, but something close to acknowledgement. And he studies me for another long moment, the silence stretching again. But this time it does not feel like judgment. It feels like a decision forming, something shifting behind his eyes that I cannot predict. And then he exhales slowly, almost imperceptibly, before stepping back just enough to create space between us. And the sudden distance feels just as intense as his closeness did a second ago. Like the room itself is adjusting to a new balance. You are not wrong, he says. Finally, his tone measured, controlled. But learning fast will not be enough. And I feel the weight of that immediately, because I understand what he means. This is not a situation where effort alone changes the outcome. This is a world with rules I do not know, lines I cannot see, consequences I cannot predict, and stepping into it blindly is just another way of making a mistake. And mistakes here do not get second chances. And he turns slightly, moving toward the table near the window where a tablet rests, the screen lighting up as he touches it, his movements efficient, practiced, like he has done this 100 times before. And for a moment I just watch him, trying to understand the rhythm of his world, the way everything seems to operate one step ahead of everyone else. And I wonder how long it took him to build that. How many moments like tonight shaped the way he thinks, the way he reacts, the way he controls everything around him. And then he speaks again without looking up. Emily Carter, he says, and my breath catches because hearing my name here, in this room, in his voice, makes everything feel more real, more irreversible. 24, part-time server, currently enrolled in night classes, and each word lands like a quiet confirmation that nothing about me is unknown to him anymore, that whatever illusion of anonymity I had is gone, replaced by something far more exposed. And I should feel violated, I should feel angry, but instead I feel something else, something sharper, because if he knows this much already, then my choice was never about staying invisible. It was about whether I would matter, and now I do, whether I wanted to or not. And he finally looks back at me, his gaze steady, assessing. You put yourself in front of a problem that was not yours, he continues, and you made it mine to solve differently. And I swallow because there is something deeper in that statement, something I am only beginning to understand, that my action did. Not just save him, it altered the way this night played out, the way decisions were made, the way outcomes shifted, and people like him do not ignore that kind of interference. They analyze it, they integrate it, they decide how to use it. And the realization settles heavy in my chest, because I am no longer just someone who acted. I am now part of the result, part of the equation he is still solving. And I force myself to speak again, even though I am not sure if I should. So what happens now? I ask, and the question feels bigger than it sounds, because I am not just asking about tonight. I am asking about everything that comes after, every consequence I cannot see yet, every door that just opened whether I want it to or not. And he watches me for a second, that same unreadable expression returning. But this time there is something steadier beneath it, something decided. Now, he says slowly, you stop being a variable. And I frown slightly because I do not fully understand what he means. And he takes a step closer again, not as close as before, but enough to remind me that distance with him is never accidental. You become part of the system. He finishes, and the words land heavier than anything else he has said tonight, because they do not sound like an offer. They sound like a shift, like something has already been set in motion, and before I can respond, before I can even process what that really means, There is another knock at the door, sharper this time, more urgent, and the air in the room changes instantly, the calm tension snapping into something more focused, and Alexander does not hesitate. "Come in," he says, his voice colder now, and when the door opens, the man who steps inside does not bother with careful wording this time. "Victoria is asking for you," he says, and everything in my chest tightens at the name, because suddenly this is not just about what I heard, not just about what I did. This is about the person who stood beside him, the one who handed him the glass, the one whose smile never reached her eyes, and I glance at Alexander, waiting for his reaction, expecting anger, frustration, something sharp, but he remains completely still, completely controlled, and after a brief pause, he nods once, like this is exactly what he expected, like this next move was always part of the night, and when his gaze shifts back to me, there is something different there now, something firmer, more defined. "You are coming with me," he says, not a question, not a suggestion, and my breath catches slightly because I understand what that means without him needing to explain it. That whatever happens next, whatever truth is about to unfold, I am no longer on the outside of it. I am walking straight into it beside him, and for a split second I think about saying no, about stepping back, about reclaiming the life I had just hours ago. But that life feels distant now, unreachable, like something that belonged to someone else. And before I can second guess it, I nod, because deep down I already know there is no going back, not after tonight, not after him. Walking beside him feels different than standing in that room, like the space around us shifts to match his pace, controlled, deliberate, every step measured as we move back toward the ballroom. And I can feel the weight of what is waiting ahead pressing closer with each second, because this is no longer about what I heard or what I did. This is about facing the person who was supposed to stand beside him tonight, the one who almost handed him something irreversible, and I wonder if she knows. If she suspects, if she has already adjusted her plan the moment things did not go the way she expected, and that thought alone tightens something in my chest, because if she is capable of that, then I am walking into a situation I barely understand with someone who has been part of it far longer than I have. And yet Alexander does not slow down, does not hesitate. His presence cutting through the hallway like everything is already decided, like whatever happens next is just another step in a sequence he has already mapped out. And when the doors to the ballroom come back into view, the music filters through again, soft, elegant, unchanged, as if nothing beneath the surface has shifted at all, and for a brief second I almost question everything, almost convince myself I imagined the tension, the danger, the quiet urgency in that room. But then he pushes the door open and the illusion settles back into place. People laughing, glasses raised, conversations flowing like nothing ever broke the rhythm. And yet I see it now, the details I missed before, the way certain people stand just a little too still, the way eyes track movements without turning heads, the way space subtly adjusts around him as he enters. And I realize this is what control looks like, not chaos, not noise, but precision hidden beneath elegance. And then I see her, Victoria, standing near the center where he left her, her posture perfect, her smile composed, but her eyes find him immediately, sharp, searching, and then they shift to me, just for a fraction of a second, and something in that glance makes my breath catch, because there is no confusion there, no surprise, just calculation, like she is already rewriting the story in her head to account for me. And I feel suddenly very aware of where I stand, not beside him exactly, but close enough that it matters, close enough that it sends a message whether I understand it or not. And Alexander does not acknowledge the room, does not pause to greet anyone. He walks directly toward her, his focus absolute, and I follow because I have already chosen not to step back, not now, not when everything is about to unfold. And as we approach, the conversation around her quiets just slightly, not enough to draw attention, but enough to create space, and she turns fully to face him, her smile soft, practiced. "You disappeared," she says, her voice light, almost teasing, like nothing is wrong, like this is just another moment in a perfect evening. But there is something beneath it, something tight, something controlled, and Alexander stops just in front of her, close enough that anyone watching would see intimacy, connection, something expected between two people like them. But I can feel the difference even from where I stand, the subtle distance in his posture, the way his attention is sharper, more focused, and for a moment neither of them speaks, just a brief pause that stretches longer than it should, and then he tilts his head slightly, studying her in a way that feels too deliberate to be casual. I needed a moment, he says, his tone calm, neutral, giving nothing away, and her gaze flickers, just for a second, like she is measuring that answer, weighing it against something only she knows, and then her eyes move to me again, slower this time, more direct. And she needed one too? She asks, the question soft but pointed, and I feel every word land because this is it. The moment I become visible in a way I cannot undo, and I hold her gaze even though my pulse picks up, even though I know she sees more than I want her to, because backing down now would say more than standing still ever could. And Alexander shifts slightly, just enough to place himself between us without making it obvious, a small movement that changes everything, that draws a line without speaking it. And when he responds, his voice is quieter but firmer. She is with me, he says, and the simplicity of it hits harder than anything else tonight, because it is not an explanation, it is not a justification, it is a statement, a position, and I see the exact moment it lands with her, the slight tightening of her expression, the almost invisible shift in her posture, like something just moved out of her control, and for the first time since I saw her, the perfection cracks just enough for me to recognize what is underneath, not fear, not panic, but something colder, something calculating, something that tells me this is far from over. And she smiles again, but this time it does not reach her eyes at all. Of course she is, she says softly, and I realize with a chill that has nothing to do with the room that whatever game was being played tonight did not end when I stepped in. It just changed players, and I am no longer watching from the outside. I am standing in the middle of it. The air between them does not break. It tightens, stretching into something invisible but sharp, and I feel it like a wire pulled too far, like one wrong word could snap everything in a direction none of us can control, and yet neither of them moves, neither of them looks away, just standing there with that perfect stillness that hides everything underneath. And I realize this is what power looks like when it does not need to raise its voice, when everything important happens in the spaces between words. And I stay where I am because I understand now that moving without thinking here is not bravery. It is a mistake, and I have already used my one moment of impulse tonight. Everything after this has to be deliberate, has to be measured, and Victoria's gaze lingers on me just long enough to make it clear that I am not dismissed, not ignored. I am being noted, categorized, placed somewhere in whatever structure she is already rebuilding in her mind. And then she looks back at Alexander, her expression smoothing again into something almost gentle. You always were unpredictable, she says softly, like it is a compliment, like it is something she has learned to admire instead of fear, but I can hear the edge beneath it, the way the words carry more than they say. And Alexander does not react immediately, does not defend, does not explain. He simply watches her, that same calm focus that feels heavier now, more intentional, like every second he gives her is a choice. And when he finally speaks, his voice is lower than before, quieter, but somehow more final. Not tonight, he says, and the meaning behind it settles into the space between them. Something I cannot fully see but can definitely feel. And for the first time her composure shifts just slightly, not enough for anyone else to notice. But I do, because I am watching too closely now, because I am part of this whether I want to be or not. And I see the calculation in her eyes sharpen, like she is adjusting to a version of him she did not expect to face. And then she smiles again, brighter this time, turning just enough to gesture toward the surrounding guests. Everyone is watching, she murmurs, her voice light but precise. We should not give them a reason to talk, and it sounds like concern, like she is protecting the image of the night. But there is something else in it too, something that feels like a reminder, like she is trying to pull the moment back into a space she understands, a space she controls. And Alexander follows her glance briefly, acknowledging the room without really seeing it. And when his attention returns to her, something in his expression has settled, like whatever decision he was making is no longer in question. They will talk either way, he replies, and there is no hesitation in it, no softness, just truth. And the simplicity of that answer shifts the balance again, subtle but undeniable, because it means he is not playing the same game she is anymore. And I feel it in the way the energy around them changes, less balanced, more defined, like lines are being drawn that cannot be erased once they are seen, and Victoria's eyes flicker, just for a fraction of a second, before she steps closer to him, closing the distance in a way that looks natural, expected, the kind of movement no one would question. But I can see the intention behind it now. The way she is reclaiming space, reasserting something that should belong to her, and her hand rests lightly against his arm, her touch controlled, deliberate. Then let them see what they expect, she says, her voice softer now, almost intimate, and I feel something twist in my chest because I understand what she is doing. She is not confronting him directly. She is reshaping the moment, turning it into something that fits her narrative instead of his. And for a second I wonder if it will work, if he will allow it. If this entire thing will fold back into the illusion that existed before I stepped in, and then he moves, just enough to shift his arm out of her reach. Not abrupt, not forceful, but clear, unmistakable. And the absence of contact feels louder than any reaction could have been. And the room around us continues as if nothing changed. Laughter, music, glasses touching. But inside this small space, everything is different now. Everything is sharper, more exposed, and Victoria's hand lowers slowly, her expression holding for just a second longer than it should before settling again. But this time, I see it clearly, the crack beneath the surface, the control slipping just enough to reveal something colder underneath. And when she speaks again, her voice is still smooth, still composed, but there is no warmth left in it. "Be careful, Alexander," she says quietly, and the words hang between them with a weight that feels heavier than any threat could be, because they are not loud, not dramatic, they are certain. And I feel a chill move through me, because I understand now that whatever was planned tonight did not disappear. It adapted, it shifted, it found a new shape the moment things did not go as expected. And Alexander does not respond right away, does not acknowledge the warning in any visible way. He simply watches her for a second longer before turning slightly, his attention moving past her, back to me. And when his eyes meet mine, there is something different there now, something more defined, more decided. Like he has moved me from one category to another without saying it out loud. And that silent shift settles deep in my chest because I know it means something I cannot undo, something that will follow me long after this night ends. And then he speaks, not to her, not to the room, but to me, his voice quiet but clear, "Stay close." And the simplicity of it lands harder than anything else tonight, because it is not just instruction, it is placement, it is choosing where I stand in a world I do not belong to. And for a second I hesitate, just a fraction, because I understand what stepping closer really means, but then I move anyway, because somewhere between the moment I heard those words in the ballroom and now, I stopped being someone who could walk away, and as I take that step, I realize with a clarity that makes my pulse steady instead of race, this is not just about surviving anymore. This is about which side I am standing on when everything finally breaks. Stepping closer to him feels like crossing a line I cannot uncross, and the moment I do, everything shifts again, not in the room, not in the music or the soft glow of chandeliers reflecting off crystal, but in the invisible space around us, the kind of shift you only notice once you are inside it. And I feel it in the way people adjust without looking, in the way conversations dip just slightly as we move, in the way attention follows without being obvious. And I realize this is what it means to stand beside someone like him, not just proximity, but presence, a weight that changes how everything moves. And I keep my expression steady even though my thoughts are anything but, because I understand now that every reaction matters, every glance, every hesitation. And I cannot afford to look like I do not belong here. Not anymore. Not after everything that has already happened. And Alexander does not look at me again. Not immediately. His attention still fixed on the room, on the people who pretend not to be watching, on the details that matter in ways I am only beginning to understand. And for a moment it feels like I am invisible again, like I slipped back into the background. But it is different this time, because I know I am not, because he told me to stay close. And that means something whether anyone else hears it or not. And the silence between us stretches just long enough for doubt to try to settle in, for me to question if I stepped into something I cannot handle. But before that thought can take hold, He speaks, low enough that only I can hear. Do not react, he says, and the words are simple, controlled, but they land with precision, like instructions I do not yet fully understand, and my pulse tightens slightly because I know what that means. Something is about to happen, something I need to face without showing it, and I straighten just a fraction, grounding myself in the moment, in the room, in the steady rhythm of the music that suddenly feels too calm for everything unfolding beneath it. And then I see it, not all at once, but piece by piece. The way his server approaches from the far side of the room, the way his path curves just slightly toward us, the way his hands are steady but his eyes flicker once too often, and I would have missed it before, I know I would have. But now I am looking differently, sharper, aware in a way I was not even an hour ago, and I feel a quiet certainty settle in my chest, not fear, not panic, just recognition. This is not over. It never was, and beside me Alexander does not move, does not shift. His posture is calm as ever, but I can feel the focus in him now, the way his attention narrows without changing anything on the surface, and it is almost unsettling how controlled it is, how nothing about him gives away what he is seeing, what he is deciding. And I wonder if this is how he always lives, always one step ahead, always waiting for the next move before it happens, and the server gets closer, step by step. The tray in his hands balanced perfectly, glasses untouched, everything appearing exactly as it should, and yet something about it feels wrong, something I cannot fully explain but cannot ignore either, and my fingers curl slightly at my sides before I catch myself, forcing stillness, remembering his words, do not react, and I focus on breathing, slow, steady, matching the calm around me even as my awareness sharpens, and then, just as the server reaches the edge of our space, Alexander shifts, not abruptly, not enough to draw attention, just a small movement, a step that changes the angle between us and the tray, his hand lifting slightly as if to decline, his voice calm, almost absent. Not now, he says, and the simplicity of it feels intentional, like a line drawn without explanation, and the server hesitates, just for a second, barely noticeable, but I see it, and I know Alexander sees it too, because that is what he has been waiting for, not the action, but the reaction, the moment something breaks from expectation, and the man nods quickly, stepping back, adjusting his path as if nothing happened, as if it was just a minor interruption, but the air does not return to normal, not for me, not now that I can see the pattern beneath it, and Alexander lowers his hand slowly, his gaze following the server for a fraction longer before shifting away, and when he finally looks at me, there is something different there again, something quieter, but sharper, like confirmation, like I just witnessed something I was meant to see, and he does not explain it, does not need to, because I understand enough now, enough to know that whatever is happening tonight is layered, controlled, unfolding in ways I cannot fully predict, but I am no longer blind to it, and that realization settles into me in a way that changes everything, because I am not just reacting anymore, I am observing, learning, adapting, and when he speaks again, his voice is lower, almost thoughtful. You noticed, he says, not a question, just a statement, and I nod slightly because there is no point pretending otherwise, not here, not with him, and something in his expression shifts, subtle but real, like a piece of the decision he made earlier is settling into place, and for the first time since I stepped into this world, I feel something unexpected beneath the tension, not fear, not uncertainty, something steadier, something that feels dangerously close to belonging. And the thought alone is enough to unsettle me, because I know what it means, I know what it costs, and as the music swells slightly, the room continuing its perfect illusion, I realize with a clarity that feels both grounding and terrifying. I am no longer trying to escape what is happening tonight, I am becoming part of it. The word lingers between us longer than it should, you noticed, and it does something unexpected to my breathing, steadies it instead of shaking it. Like recognition has its own kind of gravity, and for a moment I forget where I am, forget the music and the quiet tension threading through the room, because being seen like that, not as background, not as a mistake, but as someone who understood, shifts something deeper than fear ever could, and I nod again, slower this time, more certain, because there is no reason to pretend otherwise anymore, not after everything that has already unfolded, and his gaze holds mine for a fraction longer before he looks away, scanning the room again with that same controlled awareness. Like nothing about him ever relaxes, not fully, not even now, and I follow his line of sight without meaning to, trying to see what he sees, trying to understand how he reads a space like this, how he anticipates movement before it happens, and it is not obvious, not at first, just small things, the way certain guests stand closer to exits than they need to, the way a man near the bar checks his watch too often, the way conversations break and reform like patterns instead of randomness. And I realize with a quiet clarity that this is not chaos disguised as elegance. This is structure disguised as freedom. Every piece placed where it needs to be, every movement accounted for, and I am standing in the middle of it learning faster than I ever thought possible. And then his voice cuts through my thoughts again, softer now, almost reflective. Most people look without seeing, he says, and I feel the weight of that because I know it is true. I was one of those people just hours ago, moving through my life without noticing the layers beneath it, without understanding how much could be hidden in plain sight. And I glance at him briefly, trying to read his expression the way he reads everything else. But he gives nothing away, just that same calm surface that hides everything underneath. And for a second, I wonder what it must be like to live like that, always aware, always calculating, always prepared, and whether that kind of control costs more than it gives. And before I can follow that thought any further, something shifts again, subtle but immediate. The music does not change, the lights do not flicker, but the energy does, tightening in a way that feels almost physical, like the room itself just inhaled and has not exhaled yet. And I feel it before I see it, that quiet sense that something is about to happen. And I glance toward Alexander instinctively, but he is already watching, already focused on something beyond me. And I follow his gaze until I find it. Victoria, no longer standing still, no longer holding her position at the center, she is moving now, slowly, deliberately, weaving through the guests with that same perfect composure. But there is something different in the way she moves, something more direct, more intentional, and I realize with a slow tightening in my chest that she is not retreating, she is repositioning, and that thought alone is enough to sharpen everything around me. Because I understand now that this is not over, not even close. And as she approaches, I notice the details I missed before. The way her smile is still there, but thinner now. The way her eyes track not just Alexander, but me as well, like she is recalculating both of us at once. And when she finally stops in front of him again, the distance between them feels different, less like closeness, more like a boundary neither of them is willing to cross first. And her voice, when she speaks, is softer than before, but there is no lightness left in it. You changed the plan, she says, not a question, not an accusation, just a statement that carries more weight than anything loud ever could. And Alexander does not answer immediately, does not react the way someone else might. He simply watches her, that same stillness settling over him again, and I feel the tension rise, sharp and precise. Because this is it. The moment where everything beneath the surface starts to show, not fully, not openly, but enough to understand what is really happening here. And for a second I consider stepping back, creating distance, removing myself from whatever this is about to become, but I do not move. I stay exactly where I am, because I know now that distance will not protect me, not anymore, not after everything I have already done. And when Alexander finally speaks, his voice is calm, controlled. But there is something firmer in it now, something that was not there before. No, he says simply, I understood it. And the words land with a quiet finality that shifts the air again, because they are not defensive, not reactive, they are decisive. And I see the exact moment they reach her. The way her expression holds for just a fraction too long, the way her eyes sharpen just slightly, and I realize with a cold clarity that whatever she expected tonight, whatever she planned, it did not account for this. It did not account for him seeing it before it happened. It did not account for me. And that realization changes everything, because it means the balance is no longer where she thought it was. It means the next move is not hers alone. And as the silence stretches between them, filled with everything they are not saying, I feel my pulse steady instead of race. Because for the first time since this began, I understand something that shifts my place in it all. I am not just here by accident anymore. I am part of the reason the story changed, And whatever comes next, it will not unfold the way it was meant to, because I already changed it once, and now there is no going back. The silence after his words does not fade. It settles, heavy and deliberate, like something final has just been placed on the table and neither of them is willing to move it. And I can feel the shift in Victoria before I even see it. The way her posture tightens just slightly. The way her breathing changes, controlled but no longer effortless. And it is subtle, so subtle that no one else in this room would notice. But I do, because I am looking for it now, because I understand what it means. When control slips even a fraction, and her eyes flick toward me again, slower this time, more focused, like I am no longer just a complication, I am a factor she has to account for. And that realization sends a quiet tension through my chest, because I know I am standing in a space that was never meant for me. And yet I am here, altering it simply by existing in it. And she smiles again, but it is different now. Not the polished perfection from earlier, not the effortless charm. This one is measured, precise, like it was chosen carefully instead of naturally formed. Then you understand more than I expected, she says softly. And there is something beneath the words that I cannot fully define, not admiration, not resentment, something colder, something that feels like recalibration, like she is already adjusting to a version of the night she did not plan for. And Alexander does not respond immediately. He simply watches her, that same steady focus that seems to weigh every possibility before committing to anything. And I realize that this is not a confrontation in the way I understand it. There are no raised voices, no dramatic shifts, just quiet decisions happening in real time, shaping everything that will follow. And I stay still, forcing myself not to react, not to interrupt. Because I know now that speaking at the wrong moment here is not just a mistake. It is a signal, and I cannot afford to send the wrong one. And then Victoria tilts her head slightly, her gaze sharpening just enough to show that she is done pretending nothing changed. And what did you understand exactly? She asks, her tone light, but her eyes anything but. And the question hangs between them like a challenge that is not meant to be answered casually. And for a moment I think he might deflect, might redirect, might maintain the balance that has been carefully held all night. But instead he steps forward, just a fraction, enough to shift the space again, enough to make it clear that he is no longer maintaining anything. He is defining it. And when he speaks, his voice is quiet, controlled, but there is something unmistakable in it now, something that does not leave room for interpretation, that the plan did not account for loyalty. He says, and I feel the words before I fully understand them. The way they settle into the space, the way they draw a line that was not visible before, and Victoria's expression stills completely, not breaking, not reacting, just holding, like she is absorbing the impact of something she did not expect to hear out loud. And I feel my pulse shift, slower now, steadier, because I understand what he is doing. He is not accusing, he is not exposing. He is stating a truth that changes the foundation of everything. And by doing that, he is forcing her to respond to it, not around it, not through it, but directly. And that is where control becomes something else entirely. And for a second the room feels quieter, even though the music has not changed, even though people are still moving and talking around us, because this moment is separate from all of that. This moment exists on its own. And then she exhales slowly, the first real sign of movement since he spoke. And when she answers, her voice is softer than before, but there is an edge to it now, something sharper. Loyalty is always accounted for, she says, and the confidence in her tone would almost be convincing if I had not already seen the cracks beneath it, if I had not already noticed the way her control slipped just enough to reveal something underneath. And Alexander watches her for a second longer before shaking his head slightly, not dismissive, not careless, just certain, not when it comes from the wrong place. He replies, and I feel something tighten in my chest because I understand now that this is not just about what happened tonight. This is about something deeper, something that existed long before I stepped into this room, something that has been building between them in ways I cannot fully see but can definitely feel. And Victoria's gaze sharpens again, her focus narrowing like she is searching for something she can still control, something she can still shape to her advantage. And then, slowly, deliberately, she turns her attention to me, not glancing, not passing over, but fully, directly. And for a moment, everything else disappears. The music, the room, even Alexander's presence beside me, because the weight of her attention is that strong, that focused, and I realize with a sudden clarity that this is the moment where I am no longer just part of the situation. I am part of the confrontation itself, and her voice, when she speaks to me, is calm, composed, but there is nothing soft about it. And you, she says, her eyes locked onto mine. What exactly do you think you are doing here? And the question lands harder than anything else tonight, because it is not about curiosity, it is about position, about identity, about whether I belong in a space that was never meant to include me, and for a split second I feel the weight of that, the truth of it, the reality that I do not have an answer that fits this world, that makes sense here, but then something steadies inside me, something that has been building since the moment I chose to step forward instead of stay silent, and I lift my chin just slightly, meeting her gaze without hesitation, because I understand now that hesitation is the only thing that would confirm her expectation of me, and I cannot afford to give her that, not now, not here, and when I speak, my voice is quieter than hers, but it does not waver. I am still here, I say, and the simplicity of it feels stronger than anything more complicated could have been, because it is not an explanation, it is a fact, and the silence that follows shifts. Again, deeper this time, more defined, because in that moment I realize something that changes everything. I am no longer trying to justify my presence. I am claiming it, and whether that is the right move or the worst one I could have made, I know one thing for certain. There is no stepping back from it now. For a second, nothing moves. Not her, not him, not even me. And it feels like the entire room has narrowed down to this one moment. This one line I just crossed without knowing exactly what it would cost. And I can feel Victoria's gaze holding mine, steady, unblinking, like she is waiting for something to crack, for hesitation, for doubt, for anything that would confirm what she already decided about me. And I do not give it to her, not because I am fearless, but because I understand now that fear is something you carry quietly here, not something you show, and the silence stretches just long enough to become uncomfortable for anyone watching. But no one is watching, not openly, not obviously, and yet I can feel it, the awareness in the room shifting again, the subtle pull of attention toward us without anyone turning their heads. And then she smiles, slow, deliberate, like she just reached a conclusion she did not expect to reach. You are still here, she repeats softly, and there is something almost curious in her tone now, like I am no longer just an inconvenience. I am something she needs to understand, and that alone changes the balance more than anything else tonight, because curiosity means uncertainty, and uncertainty is the one thing she has not allowed herself until now. And I feel that shift settle into the space between us, fragile but real, and Alexander does not interrupt, does not step in. He lets the moment exist exactly as it is, and I realize that is intentional, that he is allowing this exchange to unfold without controlling it, because whatever he is deciding about me, about her, about this entire situation, requires him to see how we respond without interference, and that thought alone sharpens everything in my mind, because it means every word matters even more now. Every choice carries weight I cannot fully measure, and Victoria tilts her head slightly, studying me in a way that feels almost clinical, like she is taking me apart piece by piece without touching me. People like you do not stay in rooms like this, she says, her voice still calm, still composed. But there is something colder beneath it now, something that feels less like observation and more like a warning, and I understand what she means, not just about the room, but about everything it represents, the power, the control, the unspoken rules I have already broken just by being here. And for a second, I consider stepping back, not physically, but mentally, pulling myself out of this line of attention, letting the moment pass, letting her reclaim whatever control she lost. But something inside me does not allow it, something that has been building since the moment I chose to act instead of stay silent. And I realize with a quiet certainty that leaving now would not undo anything. It would only confirm that I was never meant to stand here in the first place, and I cannot accept that, not after everything that already changed because of me. And I take a small breath, steadying myself before I answer. Maybe they do not. I say, my voice even, controlled. But I did not come here to stay. And the words land differently than I expect. Not defensive, not aggressive, just honest, and I see the flicker of something in her eyes again, something sharper this time, like she did not anticipate that answer, like she expected me to either retreat or overreach, but not this, not something that does not fit into the role she already understands. And for a moment she says nothing, just watches me, and I can feel the tension shifting again, less about control now, more about recalculation, like the structure she built for this night is being adjusted piece by piece in real time. And then Alexander moves, just slightly, enough to step forward into the space between us, not blocking me, not shielding me, but redefining the distance in a way that feels intentional. And when he speaks, his voice is quiet, but there is no room for interpretation in it. "She is not the one you should be concerned about," he says, and the statement hangs in the air with a weight that is impossible to ignore, because it is not directed at me, not exactly. It is directed at Victoria, and for the first time since this began, I see something real break through her composure. Not dramatic, not obvious, but enough to confirm what I have been sensing all along, that whatever control she thought she had over this night, over him, is no longer secure, and her gaze sharpens instantly, shifting back to him, the focus snapping into place like a blade. "And who should I be concerned about?" she asks, her tone still smooth but no longer soft, and Alexander does not hesitate this time, does not pause, does not measure his words the way he is all night. "Yourself," he says, and the finality in that single word changes everything, because it is not just an answer, it is a declaration, a line drawn so clearly that there is no pretending it does not exist, and I feel it in the way the air shifts, in the way the tension solidifies instead of stretching, and for a moment no one moves, no one speaks. And I realize with a clarity that feels almost unreal that this is the turning point, the moment where whatever was hidden is no longer hidden, where whatever was controlled is no longer fully contained, and Victoria's expression stills completely, her smile fading just enough to reveal what has been underneath all along, not confusion, not surprise, but something colder, something calculating, something that tells me this is far from over, that whatever comes next will not be quiet, will not be subtle. And as she holds his gaze without blinking, without stepping back, I understand. Something that settles deep in my chest. This was never just about one moment, one plan, one decision. This is something bigger, something that has been building long before I walked into this room, and now, whether I am ready or not, I am standing right in the middle of it. The word lands and does not move. "Yourself," and I feel it settle into the space like something irreversible, something that cannot be softened or taken back. And for the first time since this night began, the balance does not just shift, it breaks, not loudly, not dramatically, but in a way that is far more final, because there is no pretending after that, no illusion left to hold on to. And I watch Victoria closely, because I need to understand what happens when someone like her loses control, even if it is only for a moment, even if it is hidden beneath layers of composure. And I see it, not in her posture, not in her voice, but in her stillness, the way she holds herself just a fraction too perfectly, like something inside her is tightening instead of flowing. And when she speaks, her tone is calm, but it is no longer effortless. "That is a dangerous conclusion," she says quietly, and I feel the weight of it immediately, because it is not a warning, not exactly, it is an acknowledgement, like she understands what he just did and what it means for everything that comes next. And Alexander does not respond right away. He does not rush to fill the silence. He lets it sit, lets it expand, like he knows that the absence of words is doing more than anything he could say. And I realize that this is part of how he controls things, not just through action, but through restraint, through knowing when not to move. And the room continues around us, the music still playing, the guests still talking, but it feels distant now, like it belongs to another version of the night that no longer exists. And Victoria takes a small step back, not retreating, not giving ground, just creating space, enough to shift the dynamic without breaking it completely. And her gaze moves briefly across the room before returning to him. "You always did underestimate me," she adds, and there is something different in her voice now, something sharper, something that does not hide behind politeness anymore. And I feel the tension rise again, but it is not chaotic, it is precise, like two forces adjusting to a new reality instead of reacting blindly. And Alexander tilts his head slightly, considering her words, and when he answers, his voice is quieter than before, but there is no uncertainty in it. No, he says, I stopped overestimating you. And the difference between those two things lands harder than anything else tonight, because it reframes everything, not as a mistake, not as a miscalculation, but as a correction, and I see the exact moment it reaches her, the way her expression tightens just enough to reveal the impact, and for a second neither of them moves, the silence stretching again, but this time it feels heavier, more final, like something has been decided that cannot be undone, and I stand there between them, not speaking, not moving, but no longer invisible, no longer outside of it. And I realize with a quiet clarity that I am witnessing something that goes beyond this night, beyond this room, something that has been building for far longer than I can understand. And then Victoria exhales slowly, her shoulders relaxing just enough to signal a shift, not surrender, but acceptance. And when she speaks, again, her voice is smooth once more, but the warmth is gone completely, replaced by something colder, more calculated. Then I suppose we are finished here, she says, and the words are simple, but they carry a weight that changes everything. Because they are not just about the conversation, they are about the entire arrangement, the entire structure that existed before this moment. And Alexander watches her for a second longer before nodding once, a small movement that confirms what she already knows, what I am only beginning to understand, and something inside me tightens at that, because I can feel the finality of it even if I do not know all the details. And Victoria's gaze shifts one last time, not to him, but to me. And there is no curiosity in it now, no uncertainty, just a clear, measured assessment, like she has reached her conclusion about me as well, and whatever that conclusion is, it is not something she will forget. And then she turns, her movement smooth, controlled, stepping away without looking back, disappearing into the crowd as if she was never standing here at all. And yet the absence she leaves behind feels heavier than her presence did, because I know this is not the end, not really. It is just the end of this part, and the beginning of something else entirely. And for a moment I do not move, do not speak, just stand there as the room slowly returns to its illusion of normal, the music swelling slightly, the conversations rising again, and it almost feels unreal, like everything that just happened existed in a separate space no one else can see. And then I feel it, the shift beside me, Alexander turning slightly, his presence pulling my attention back to him. And when I look at him, his expression is different again, not relaxed, not relieved, but settled, like a decision has been completed. And when he speaks, his voice is lower now, meant only for me. It is done, he says, and the simplicity of it should feel like an ending, but it does not. It feels like something else, something quieter but more significant, like a door closing behind us and another opening in front of us. And I swallow slightly, the weight of everything finally catching up to me, not overwhelming, not breaking, just real. What happens now? I ask, because I need to know, because I understand now that there is no returning to before. And he looks at me for a second, that same steady gaze that seems to see more than I can hide. And when he answers, there is something different in his tone, something that was not there earlier, something that feels almost personal. Now, he says slowly, you stay. And the word lands deeper than anything